Hey everyone, welcome to Masonzero MTG. Today we're talking about 3-color cards for Cube, which is especially relevant and it's been on my mind given the recent release of Tarkir Dragonstorm, which features a ton of 3-color cards. Now, not every cube needs 3-color cards. Most cubes seem to max out at 2-color cards, and that's fine. Even the MTGO Vintage Cube doesn't run any truly 3-color cards. Speaking of which, unless otherwise noted, all of my videos are using the MTGO Vintage Cube as a baseline for what makes a good cube card. Not necessarily the fact that there's Power 9 and everything in it, but the fact that most of the cards in it, other than those, kind of set the standard for what is cube-worthy, and even lower-powered cubes are often based around some of these staples. Anyways, just want to make sure we're speaking the same language. Now personally, I love 3-color cards, but they do present a unique challenge, so let's dive into the good and the bad. And we're starting with the bad. 3-color cards can be scary for drafters. They represent a risky splash, as most draft decks tend to be 2 colors unless the cube supports really good fixing. You really need to make sure your 3-color cards have a good reason for being 3 colors. Like, Void Rend is cool, sure, but is being uncounterable really worth adding another color to vindicate? Temur Ascendancy is really neat, but the card draw effect is likely better on a mono green card like Garruk's Uprising. Often 3-color cards are just not worth the mana investment, so you need to make sure they justify their own existence. Now let's look at the good, because as a counterpoint to that last statement, 3-color cards often do bring unique effects to the table that don't otherwise exist in 1 or 2 colors. Caesar Legion's Emperor is a tokens powerhouse that provides more utility to tokens decks while being in the appropriate colors for tokens aggro. Leovold Emissary of Trest combines 2 effects that you might find on other blue cards, but puts them onto one streamlined creature that can help protect your important or large black and green creatures. So, with some of that criteria in mind, what makes a good pick for 3-color cards? It should be highly impactful, have a unique effect that doesn't exist in fewer colors, and ideally it should signpost something that color combination wants to do, although that one isn't always necessary. Sometimes a good card can just be good. I'm going to cover a couple of my favorite cards in each color combination and explain why they're good for cube. I'll also talk about what I run in each of these slots for my cube, as my primary cube does have one 3-color card for each of the 10 combinations. For Esper, we have Alila Artful Provocateur. Alila is a signpost for flying creatures, and Esper is the perfect color combination for this. It's also really the full package, which is exactly what you want. It has good keywords, it buffs flyers, and it makes flyers. It does require artifacts and enchantments to make those tokens, but even if you only trigger it a couple times, I think it's worthwhile. It's especially good if you have cards like Bitter Blossom in your cube, or other token signposts like Anointed Procession. This is what I currently run in my cube because it really connects all the dots there. Previously though, I ran Sphinx of the Steel Wind, which was a crazy reanimation target with a bunch of keywords. Grixis. For Grixis, we have Sauron the Dark Lord. So if we're being technical, Relic of Sauron is probably one of the best Grixis cards for cube, and I believe the Vintage Cube runs it, but I don't want to be technical about this. That's an artifact. But luckily, the best Grixis card is still a Lord of the Rings card, and that's Sauron the Dark Lord. This is a 6-mana 7/6 with a whole novel worth of abilities. It has a ward cost of sacrificing a legendary artifact or creature. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass orcs. Whenever an army you control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you. And whenever the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand and draw 4 cards. This thing can be pretty insane. 6 mana is not crazy in the slightest for a control deck, and that ward effect is pretty prohibitive. It's not a matter of if the opponent will pay the ward cost, but whether they can. Even with there being a pretty high concentration of legendaries in cube these days, it's a tall ask, and will likely remove something you wanted to kill anyways. You will likely make a token even if your opponent does remove Sauron, though getting it to deal damage might be a bigger ask. If you do though, the ring tempting you will trigger a huge hand refill. 4 cards is nothing to scoff at. I actually just put Sauron into my cube, but previously I had Gaeadrone Dihada because I have a lot of Planeswalkers in my cube, and that is just another one. And before that I had Cruel Ultimatum, but I decided to cut it due to its interaction with some other cards. Now I think there are some arguments for other cards that are, first of all, far more popular, but also maybe even better in Grixis. I think Sauron's numbers aren't as high. because he's a newer card, and maybe people have not caught on. Currently, Kess Dissident Mage is the most popular Grixis card in cubes, followed by Nicol Bolas the Ravager and Nicol Bolas Dragon God, and then Cruel Ultimatum, which I mentioned earlier. Marchesa the Black Rose is also popular, and a bunch of other things, but definitely don't sleep on Sauron. For Naya, we have Jetmir Nexus of Revels. There are quite a few Naya cards that are actually worth playing, especially if you have specific themes in your cube that really suit them. But I think overall, Jetmir Nexus of Revels covers what a Naya deck would want to do. He is a go-wide king, granting additional buffs to your creatures when you have 3, 6, and 9 of them. This, of course, assumes a token theme. So like I said, it might not work for every cube, but I think Naya generally wants to do tokens. I also think that Gired Conclave Exile and Ginny Fae Jetmir II are also reasonable picks. However, apparently the most commonly cubed Naya card, which is also the one that I run, is Zakama Primal Calamity. Zakama costs 9 mana, but if you can resolve her, it's a great card. I imagine this is popular because of commander cubes, because I don't think you're often going to be casting Zakama in a normal 1v1. However, I'm going to try to ignore talking about commander cubes in these lists, because, again, unless otherwise specified, these videos are going to be about 1v1 regular cubes. So Zakama, definitely great for commander cubes, but if you're doing a regular cube, try out Jetmir. For Jund, we have Korvold the Fey Cursed King. Without a doubt, Korvold is the best Jund card for cube. It plays perfectly with a black-red sacrifice deck, which green can enhance very nicely, with all of its sacrifice effects and its recursion effects. Korvold is 5 mana for a 4/4 flying creature that makes you sacrifice another permanent when it enters or attacks, but whenever you sack something, you put a counter on him and draw a card. He's a threat to your opponent's life total and a fantastic enabler for sacrifice strategies. Currently, I run Lord Windgrace because my cube is Planeswalker-centric, but he is actually the second most cubed Jund card. Despite being a commander card and probably often played in commander cubes, this Planeswalker actually plays perfectly fine in a 1v1 cube and synergizes nicely if you have fetch lands and landfall. I think back in the day when there were fewer options, my Jund slot was filled with Broodmate Dragon. In Bant, we have Chulane, Teller of Tales. Bant isn't super exciting, and Chulane is probably the best choice of all of them. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you draw a card, then can put a land into play. Plus, you can pay to bounce a creature to your hand. It's all value, and even though it hints at a self-bounce and enters the battlefield type of deck, it's still perfectly fine without that if you're just running any creature-focused deck. Rune of the Hidden Realm is definitely close behind though, and offers a similar strategy. Currently, I am running Tamiyo Field Researcher because, again, Planeswalkers. This card is also kind of generic value, but tapping things and drawing cards is nice and useful no matter what you're playing. Kaikar Wind's Fury is my favorite Jeskai card, which is difficult to say because there are a lot of good Jeskai cards. It's definitely the most cube appropriate. It's a flyer that makes flying tokens when you cast a non-creature spell. And those tokens, which are spirits, can be cashed in for red mana, which helps you cast more spells. This ability is pretty good since you can sack any spirit. It can be the tokens that Kaikar creates, it can be a token created by Lingering Souls, or it can be a non-token spirit. I think this card just barely edges out another of my favorites, which is Jeskai Ascendancy, which is also a very good card, but loses just a little bit since it's not ideal when you're behind, since it doesn't work to develop your board at all. Currently, I don't run either of these cards, and instead run Narset of the Ancient Way. I have a Planeswalker-centric cube, and Narset goes really well in my Jeskai Spells archetype. And I think it is a decent card, although I do think a card like Chandra Torch of Defiance is kind of similar in what it does, so I'm not dedicated to having Narset fill my Jeskai spot. Maybe Kaikar is going to earn their spot soon. For Abzan, of course we have Siege Rhino. There aren't that many cube-worthy Abzan cards, so I think I have to go with the tried and true classic. It's a 4-mana 4/5 with Trample that drains for 3 when it enters. It's a big, dumb mid-range beater, and it's one of the primary colors for flickering creatures. Plus, it's simple and readable, which is sometimes just what you want in your cube. Since there isn't much to say about Siege Rhino, I'll add that Thalia and the Gikrog monster is a good runner-up, though I think its power level depends a lot more on your cube's contents, which Siege Rhino is always just a big life drainer, and it's always good no matter the power level. It's always fine. Siege Rhino is also the Abzan card that I am currently running in my cube. For Mardu, we have Crackling Doom. Mardu doesn't have a lot of great options. Queen Marchesa is the most cubed Mardu card, but this is again mostly due to commander cubes. Therefore, I think Crackling Doom is probably my favorite cubable card in this color combo. For 3 mana, you deal 2 damage to your opponent, and each opponent sacrifices the creature they control with the greatest power. It's not the most exciting effect in the world, but it's fine. Currently, I run Ankle Shanker, which to signpost a go-wide theme, as First Strike and Death Touch is a terrifying combo. I also think that Caesar, the card I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is also a reasonable Mardu option that's probably growing in popularity. For Temur, we have Animar, Soul of Elements. This is a clear winner for Temur. At just 3 mana, it has protection from white and black, 2 of the most common creature removal colors, and it gets a +1/+1 counter every time you cast a creature spell. And then creature spells you cast cost 1 less for each 1/1 counter on it. Yep, it's everything these colors of giant creatures could possibly want. If you're devoted to landfall, I think the new Dragonback Assault from Tarkir Dragonstorm could be a pretty fun card to try, but I am also running Animar right now. I think before that I ran Surak Dragonclaw, which is also a totally reasonable cube card in these colors that has kind of a similar thesis in mind. For Sultai, we have Leovold, Emissary of Trest. This is clearly the best Sultai card for cube, despite having nothing to do with what the color combination usually wants to do. It's a control and protection card, so it supports the rest of your deck. Muldrotha the Gravetide is also a great card and a popular one if you actually want to signpost a graveyard theme. So depending on the goals of your cube and why you're running 3 color cards, I think these are both good options. Currently, I am running Yarok the Desecrated, but I am not sold on keeping it since it's just kind of Panharmonicon again. So those are all 10 3-color combinations and what I generally consider to be the best card for cube in each of them. My decision is based off of a combination of cube Cobra data on the most popular cards, as well as a little bit of personal experience and personal preference, and of course filtering through commander versus non-commander cubes. I think all 10 of these cards and any runner-ups I mentioned justify their color requirement with a unique effect, while also being suitable for the kind of gameplay you can expect out of a cube experience. Let me know in the comments if you run 3 color cards in any of your cubes, why you do or don't, and why you haven't subscribed to this channel yet. Seriously, why haven't you? Don't you want to be one of my first 1,000 subscribers? Alright, jokes aside, get out of here and I'll see you in the next Masonzero MTG video.